A millionaire stops his car when he sees a woman with two small children freezing on the sidewalk. He suddenly realizes he knows her, but he can't believe what he's seeing. What he did next changed her life forever and will leave you speechless. Hey, where are you watching us from today? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. The rain fell in relentless sheets that evening, painting the small town in shades of gray. Clara Evans tugged her thin coat tighter around her frame as she hurried down the dimly lit street. The chill seeped into her bones, but it was the least of her concerns. With each step, her worn-out shoes splashed through shallow puddles, but her mind was elsewhere. Every thought was consumed by the stack of bills on her kitchen counter, the groceries she couldn't afford, and the two small faces waiting for her at home. The sharp contrast between the life she had now and the life she once had haunted her. A warm house, laughter echoing in its halls, and a sense of security had been replaced by uncertainty and despair. The betrayal of Matt Harper, her husband, lingered like a fresh wound, cutting deeper with every reminder of what she had lost. Clara reached the small restaurant where she worked as a waitress. The neon sign above the door flickered as if struggling to stay alive. Inside, the scent of greasy food mixed with the faint smell of cleaning chemicals. Her co-workers greeted her with tired smiles, each of them carrying their own burdens. The restaurant was a haven for the town's weary, a place where stories of hardship were exchanged over cups of coffee. Clara tied her apron around her waist and forced herself to focus on the task ahead. She needed this job. Every meager tip meant another meal for her daughters, Mia and Ella. As the evening progressed, she moved from table to table, her hands steady despite the ache in her arms and the heaviness in her heart. The pain of her reality was a constant companion, but Clara had mastered the art of hiding it behind a polite smile. By the time her shift ended, the streets were nearly deserted. Clara stepped out into the cold night, her breath visible in the air. Mia and Ella waited for her at the corner of the street, bundled in mismatched jackets that barely fit. Their faces lit up as they saw her, and for a moment, the weight on Clara's shoulders seemed to lift. They huddled together under the awning of a closed bakery, sharing the single sandwich Clara had managed to save from her shift. Mia, the elder of the two, tried to insist that her mother take the larger half, but Clara refused. Watching her daughters eat, their laughter soft but genuine, Clara felt a flicker of hope. They had so little, yet their love for one another remained unshaken. The sound of an engine disrupted their quiet moment. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, its polished exterior a stark contrast to the worn-out surroundings. Clara tensed instinctively, shielding her daughters as the driver's door opened. From the car stepped a man she hadn't seen in over a decade. Andrew Carter. Time had transformed the shy boy she once knew into a confident man with sharp features and an air of authority. His tailored suit and expensive watch told a story of success, but his eyes, filled with concern, told another. He approached cautiously, his gaze shifting between Clara and her daughters. "Clara?" he asked, his voice carrying both surprise and disbelief. "It's me, Andrew." For a moment, Clara was speechless. Memories of their school days flooded her mind, back when life was simpler and full of promise. Andrew had always been kind, but they had drifted apart after graduation. Seeing him now, so put together while she stood there in her wrinkled uniform, was a bitter reminder of how far she had fallen. "Andrew," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Her instinct was to retreat, to shield herself from the pity she saw in his eyes. But before she could step away, Mia tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, who's he?" Ella, ever curious, clung to her leg and peeked out from behind her. Andrew crouched to their level, a warm smile softening his features. "I'm an old friend of your mom's," he said gently. Turning back to Clara, his expression grew serious. "Clara, what happened? You shouldn't be out here like this." His words were a lifeline and a dagger all at once. She wanted to explain, to tell him everything, but pride held her back. Her struggles were her own, and she had no intention of letting anyone, not even Andrew, see her as weak. "We're fine," she said quickly, brushing off his concern. Thank you for stopping, but we don't need help. Her voice was firm, but the cracks in her resolve were evident. Andrew didn't press her, but the look in his eyes told Clara he wasn't convinced. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you can call me, he said, handing her a business card. Clara hesitated before taking it, her fingers trembling slightly. As he walked back to his car, she felt a mix of emotions: relief, embarrassment, and a strange sense of longing. She tucked the card into her pocket, unsure if she would ever use it. As the car disappeared into the night, Clara gathered her daughters and began the long walk home. The warmth of their laughter faded as they entered their small, drafty apartment. But even as she tucked Mia and Ella into bed, Clara couldn't shake the image of Andrew's face and the spark of hope his presence had ignited. The next morning arrived with the sun barely breaking through the gray clouds, casting a cold and indifferent light over Clara's small apartment. The cramped space was a far cry from the home she had once shared with Matt. Its peeling wallpaper and second-hand furniture bore the scars of a life turned upside down. Clara sat at the small kitchen table, staring at the business card Andrew had given her the night before. His name and number were printed in bold, confident letters, a stark contrast to the shaky foundation of her own life. The temptation to call him gnawed at her, but pride held her back. She had fought this far on her own. Accepting help felt like admitting defeat. Mia and Ella's laughter echoed faintly from the bedroom, where they were playing with a few well-worn toys. Clara's heart ached as she listened. They deserved so much more than this, more than a mother who worked herself to exhaustion and barely scraped by. Her mind drifted to Matt, to the life they'd built together before it all crumbled. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the way he'd looked her in the eye and lied. "It's just some paperwork," he had said, sliding the documents across the table. She had trusted him, signed her name without a second thought, and in doing so, handed him the keys to their life. By the time she realized what he'd done, it was too late. He was gone, and so was everything else. Clara had spent weeks searching for him, filing police reports and pleading with lawyers, but Matt had covered his tracks well. The system didn't care about her heartbreak or her desperation. It was a man's world, and Matt knew how to play it. The realization had been a bitter pill to swallow, but it hardened her resolve. If she couldn't rely on anyone else, she would rely on herself. Still, the weight of it all threatened to crush her. There were nights she cried herself to sleep, her silent sobs muffled by the thin walls of the apartment. But she never let Mia and Ella see her break. They needed her to be strong, even if it was a facade. Later that day, Clara took the girls to the park. It was one of the few places they could go without spending money, and Mia loved the swings. As Clara pushed her youngest daughter higher and higher, she felt a rare moment of peace. The crisp autumn air and the sound of children playing were a welcome distraction from her troubles. But even here, her thoughts were clouded by worry. How much longer could she keep this up? The restaurant barely paid enough to cover rent, let alone provide for 2 growing children. The thought of returning to school, of chasing the dream she'd once had of becoming a designer, felt like a distant fantasy. There simply wasn't time. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Clara noticed a familiar figure approaching. Andrew Carter. His presence was as striking as it had been the night before, but this time, he looked more casual, dressed in a sweater and jeans. He greeted Clara with a warm smile, his hands tucked into his pockets. "I thought I might find you here," he said. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure if it was embarrassment or something else. "You've been following me now?" she asked, her tone sharp despite the faint blush on her cheeks. Andrew chuckled, shaking his head. "No, Clara. This is the only park in town. I figured it was worth a shot." They talked for a while, the conversation easy despite the years that had passed. Andrew didn't pry, but his concern was evident. He told her about his life, his business ventures, and his time abroad. Clara listened intently, her guard slowly lowering. When he mentioned his late parents, a flicker of vulnerability crossed his face. It was a reminder that even the most successful people carry their own scars. As they spoke, Mia and Ella warmed up to Andrew, their laughter filling the air as he pushed them on the swings. Clara watched from a distance, a strange mix of emotions stirring within her. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. That night, Clara lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Andrew's offer lingered in her mind like an unanswered question. His kindness felt genuine, but the walls she had built around herself were not so easily dismantled. Trusting someone again felt dangerous, almost reckless. Still, the image of Mia and Ella laughing with Andrew haunted her thoughts. They deserved a chance at something better, even if it meant swallowing her pride. Clara reached for her phone. The business card Andrew had given her now crumpled from being held too tightly. With a deep breath, she dialed his number. Andrew answered on the second ring, his voice warm and steady. "Clara," he said, as though he had been waiting for her call. For a moment, she froze, the words caught in her throat. I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "About helping." Andrew didn't press her, giving her the space she needed to continue. "I can't do this alone anymore," she admitted, the admission feeling like both a relief and a surrender. Andrew's response was immediate. "You don't have to," he said simply. "Let's figure this out together." The following morning, Andrew arrived at Clara's apartment with a sense of purpose. He had arranged for a temporary place for her and the girls to stay, a small guest house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm and safe. Clara hesitated as they packed their few belongings, the reality of her decision sinking in. She was leaving behind the life she had struggled to build, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to step into this new chapter. Andrew, sensing her apprehension, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This isn't charity," he said softly. "It's a fresh start." The guest house was modest but comfortable, with enough space for Mia and Ella to have their own room. The girls ran through the house with excitement, their laughter echoing off the walls. For the first time in months, Clara felt a weight lift from her chest. She could breathe again. As she stood in the small living room, watching her daughters explore their new home, Andrew approached with a folder in hand. "I have an idea," he said, his eyes bright with determination. Inside the folder were brochures for design schools and courses. "You once told me this was your dream," he said. "Why not chase it now?" Clara was taken aback. The thought of going back to school seemed impossible. How could she juggle work, motherhood, and studying? "Andrew, I can't," she began, shaking her head. But Andrew wasn't deterred. "You can," he insisted, "and I'll be here to help you every step of the way." His belief in her was both humbling and terrifying. For years, Clara had buried her dreams beneath the weight of survival. Now, for the first time, someone was telling her it was okay to want more. The days that followed were filled with small but significant changes. Andrew helped Clara enroll in an evening course, and he began to spend more time with Mia and Ella, building a bond with them that grew stronger by the day. Clara found herself smiling more, the spark of hope in her eyes slowly returning. But with each step forward, she couldn't shake the fear that it would all come crashing down. Trusting Andrew felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if the fall would end in flight or disaster. The days passed, and Clara began to settle into the rhythm of her new life. The guest house became a sanctuary for her and her daughters, a place where laughter began to replace the silence of survival. Andrew's presence was constant but unobtrusive. He balanced offering help with respecting Clara's independence, a quality she found herself quietly admiring. Mia and Ella had taken to him quickly, their laughter often spilling into the evenings as they played games or read stories together. For the first time in years, Clara began to feel something unfamiliar: stability. One evening, as Clara sat at the small dining table reviewing her coursework, Andrew arrived with a folder under his arm and a determined look in his eyes. He had been working on something, and the excitement in his expression was impossible to ignore. "I've been thinking about your design dreams," he began, placing the folder in front of her. Inside were plans for a small project, a local cafe that needed a complete interior overhaul. The owner, a friend of Andrew's, was willing to give Clara a chance. "This could be your first step into the industry," he said, his tone filled with encouragement. Clara stared at the plans, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and excitement. It was an opportunity she never imagined would come so soon. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted, her voice trembling. Andrew leaned forward, his gaze steady. "You're more than ready," he said firmly. "You have the vision, the talent. This is your chance to show it." His faith in her was unwavering, and it gave Clara the courage to consider what once felt impossible. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice tinged with determination. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of confidence reigniting within her. The next few weeks were a blur of sketches, fabric samples, and meetings. Clara poured herself into the project, determined to prove not only to Andrew but also to herself that she was capable. Andrew was by her side every step of the way, offering guidance when needed but never overshadowing her work. The girls, too, became part of the process, their small hands helping to organize materials or pin fabric swatches to boards. It became a family effort, a shared dream that brought them closer together. But as Clara began to find her footing, shadows from her past began to resurface. One afternoon, while picking up Mia and Ella from school, she saw a familiar face in the parking lot. Matt Harper. He was leaning against a car, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos he had left behind. Clara's heart raced as their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. She tightened her grip on Mia's hand, her protective instincts kicking in. "Mommy, who's that?" Ella asked innocently. Clara forced a smile, shielding her daughters from the storm brewing inside her. "No one important," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil. That night, Clara couldn't shake the encounter. Memories of Matt's betrayal came rushing back, threatening to unravel the progress she had made. She debated whether to tell Andrew but hesitated, not wanting to burden him with her past. Instead, she buried her fear, focusing on the cafe project and her daughters. But deep down, she knew Matt's reappearance wasn't a coincidence. He had always been a man who took what he wanted, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't changed. Clara's suspicions were confirmed when Matt showed up at the cafe where she was working on the design. His presence was as unwelcome as it was unnerving. "You've done well for yourself," he said, his tone dripping with condescension as he looked around the space. Clara straightened, refusing to let him see her fear. "What do you want, Matt?" she asked, her voice cold and firm. Matt smirked, the same smug expression that had once fooled her into believing he was trustworthy. "I just wanted to see how you were doing," he said casually, "and maybe talk about the girls." Clara's stomach churned at his words. Matt had never shown any real interest in Mia and Ella, and she doubted his intentions now were genuine. "You don't get to talk about them," she snapped, her anger bubbling to the surface. "You gave up that right when you walked out." Matt's expression darkened, but before he could respond, Andrew appeared. His presence was a welcome relief, his calm but firm demeanor a stark contrast to Matt's arrogance. "Is there a problem here?" Andrew asked, his voice steady. Matt took one look at him and backed off, muttering something under his breath before leaving. Andrew's concern was evident as he turned to Clara. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Clara nodded, though the encounter had shaken her. She finally told Andrew about seeing Matt at the school and the cafe. Andrew listened without judgment, his support unwavering. "You don't have to face him alone," he said firmly. "We'll handle this together." His words were a balm to Clara's frayed nerves, but she couldn't help but feel the weight of Matt's shadow looming over her newfound peace. Despite the tension, Clara pushed forward with the cafe project. The grand opening was fast approaching, and she was determined to make it a success. With Andrew's help, she finalized the details, from the lighting to the furniture arrangements. The owner of the cafe was thrilled with her work, and Clara began to feel a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she saw a future where she could provide for her daughters and pursue her passion. But Matt's reappearance continued to haunt her. He began leaving messages on her phone, each one more insistent than the last. Clara tried to ignore them, but the fear of what he might do lingered. Andrew noticed her unease and confronted her about it one evening. "You need to stand up to him," he said gently. "He only has power over you if you let him." Clara knew he was right, but the thought of facing Matt again was daunting. She had spent so long running from him that the idea of confronting him felt impossible. The night before the cafe's grand opening, Clara finally made a decision. She couldn't let Matt derail everything she had worked for. With Andrew by her side, She would confront him and set clear boundaries. It was a terrifying prospect, but she knew it was the only way to protect her daughters and move forward. As she stood in the guest house that evening, watching Mia and Ella sleep, Clara felt a surge of determination. She had come too far to let fear hold her back. The confrontation with Matt came sooner than Clara anticipated. The next morning, he showed up unannounced at the guest house. Clara stood her ground, Andrew at her side. Matt's attempts to manipulate her were met with firm resistance, and for the first time, Clara felt the power shift. She wasn't the same woman he had left behind. With Andrew's support, she laid out clear terms. He would have no place in her life or her daughters unless he proved himself to be a responsible and consistent presence. Matt's reaction was predictable, anger mixed with indignation, but Clara didn't flinch. As he stormed away, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't the end of her challenges, but it was a step toward reclaiming her power. Andrew's steady presence throughout the ordeal was a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. Together, they began to prepare for the cafe opening, a milestone in Clara's journey of rebuilding her life. The morning of the cafe's grand opening was filled with nervous energy. Clara stood in the middle of the beautifully transformed space, taking in the culmination of weeks of hard work. Every detail reflected her vision, from the soft, ambient lighting to the carefully chosen furniture and art pieces that adorned the walls. It was more than just a project to her. It was proof that she could rise above the struggles of her past. Mia and Ella, dressed in their best clothes, ran excitedly between the tables, their laughter filling the room like sunlight. Andrew was there too, his reassuring smile giving her the strength to face the day. The event started slowly, with a trickle of customers curious about the newly renovated cafe. But as the morning progressed, the space began to fill with people. Clara watched nervously from behind the counter, her heart pounding with every compliment and nod of approval she overheard. The cafe's owner approached her with a wide grin, his gratitude evident. "You've outdone yourself, Clara," he said. "This place is better than I could have ever imagined." Her cheeks flushed with pride, and for a moment, she allowed herself to believe that she was capable of achieving more than just survival. But the day wasn't without its challenges. Midway through the event, Clara noticed Matt standing outside, his figure partially obscured by the reflection in the glass. Her stomach tightened, but she refused to let him ruin her moment. Andrew noticed her unease and followed her gaze. Without a word, he stepped outside to confront Matt. Clara watched from a distance, her chest tight with a mix of fear and gratitude. Andrew's presence had become a steadying force in her life, and she trusted him to handle the situation. When he returned, his expression was calm but firm. "He's gone," Andrew said simply. "He won't bother you today." As the event drew to a close, Clara felt a surge of relief and accomplishment. The cafe was a success, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was standing on solid ground. That evening, after the girls had fallen asleep, she and Andrew sat together in the quiet of the guest house. "You were amazing today," Andrew said, his voice warm and full of pride. Clara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. Andrew shook his head. "You've always had it in you, Clara. I just helped you see it." Their conversation took a deeper turn as they reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Andrew shared stories of his own struggles, of moments when he had doubted himself and felt lost. His vulnerability touched Clara, and for the first time, she allowed herself to lower her guard completely. "I've spent so long trying to do everything on my own," she confessed. "But maybe I don't have to anymore." Andrew reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "You don't," he said softly. "You never have to face anything alone again." As the evening stretched into night, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The future still held uncertainties, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid to face them. With Andrew by her side, she felt a strength she had almost forgotten she possessed. The cafe's success was just the beginning. Clara was ready to embrace the opportunities that lay ahead, no matter how daunting they seemed. The weeks that followed the cafe's opening brought both triumphs and challenges. Clara began receiving inquiries from other local businesses interested in her design work, and for the first time, She found herself juggling multiple projects. It was exhilarating but also exhausting. Balancing work, classes, and motherhood stretched her thin, but she refused to let anything fall through the cracks. Andrew continued to be her anchor, stepping in whenever she needed support. Whether it was picking up Mia and Ella from school or helping her brainstorm ideas for a project, he was always there. Despite the progress she was making, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Matt's presence was still a looming threat. He hadn't contacted her since the cafe's grand opening, but his absence felt more like the calm before a storm than a true resolution. Clara confided in Andrew one evening, her fears spilling out like a flood. "He's not done," she said, her voice trembling. "I can feel it." Andrew listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "We'll handle it," he assured her. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." The tension came to a head one afternoon when Clara received a call from the school. Mia had been upset after a man claiming to be her father had tried to pick her up. Clara's blood ran cold as she listened to the principal's explanation. Matt had shown up unannounced, his charm masking the chaos he brought with him. Clara rushed to the school, her heart racing. When she arrived, Mia ran into her arms, her small body shaking with tears. "He said he was going to take us," Mia sobbed. Clara held her tightly, her anger and fear boiling beneath the surface. Andrew arrived moments later, his expression a mixture of concern and quiet fury. Together, they met with the school staff and clarified the situation. Matt had no legal right to take the girls, but the incident left Clara shaken. That evening, she and Andrew began discussing legal options. "We need to make this official," Andrew said. "Full custody, restraining orders. Whatever it takes to keep him away." Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't let Matt disrupt their lives any longer. The legal process was daunting, but Clara faced it head-on. Andrew connected her with a lawyer, and together, they began building a case. It was a painful process, dredging up memories and reliving the betrayal, but Clara knew it was necessary. As she worked through the paperwork and court hearings, she found herself leaning on Andrew more than ever. His unwavering support was a constant reminder that she didn't have to carry the burden alone. Through it all, Clara's bond with her daughters grew stronger. Mia and Ella began to open up about their fears and feelings, their trust in their mother unshakable. Andrew's role in their lives deepened as well, his kindness and patience earning him the girls' affection. One evening, as they all sat together in the living room, Ella climbed onto Andrew's lap and whispered, "I wish you were our dad." The words brought tears to Clara's eyes, and she realized just how much Andrew had become a part of their family. As Clara prepared for the final custody hearing, she discovered something that changed everything. While sorting through old paperwork, she stumbled upon a series of documents Matt had left behind. Among them were details of financial accounts and transactions he had hidden during their marriage. The discovery was a bombshell, exposing the depth of Matt's deceit. Clara immediately shared the information with her lawyer, who saw it as a potential turning point in the case. The hearing was tense, with Matt attempting to paint himself as a devoted father. But Clara's newfound evidence, combined with her testimony and Andrew's support, dismantled his facade. The judge ruled in Clara's favor, granting her full custody of Mia and Ella and issuing a restraining order against Matt. The victory was bittersweet, a reminder of the pain Matt had caused but also a testament to Clara's resilience. As the dust settled, Clara felt a sense of closure. Matt's hold on her life had finally been severed. She could move forward without fear, her focus fully on her daughters and the life she was building with Andrew. That evening, as they celebrated the victory, Andrew surprised her with a small box. Inside was a simple but elegant ring. "Clara," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "will you let me be a part of your life, your family, forever?" Tears filled Clara's eyes as she nodded, her heart full of hope and love. The pain of her past hadn't disappeared, but it no longer defined her. With Andrew by her side, she was ready to embrace the future, one filled with love, stability, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The days after Andrew's proposal felt like a dream to Clara. She was overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions: love, gratitude, and disbelief that someone could genuinely want to share her life, including all its complications. Andrew's presence had transformed not just her circumstances, but also her heart. The ring on her finger was a symbol of the stability and partnership she had craved for so long. Yet, beneath the joy, Clara knew there was one final piece of her past she needed to confront before fully embracing the future. Matt Harper might have been legally barred from their lives, but the emotional scars he'd left behind still lingered. Clara wanted to face him one last time. Not out of anger, but to draw a firm line between the woman she once was and the woman she had become. The idea terrified her, but she knew it was necessary. When she shared her plan with Andrew, his reaction was both protective and supportive. "You don't owe him anything," Andrew said gently. "But if this is what you need to do, I'll be there for you." His words gave her strength, and Clara decided to arrange a meeting with Matt in a neutral location under the supervision of her lawyer. The meeting took place in a sterile conference room at the lawyer's office. Clara sat at the head of the table, her posture straight and her expression calm, though her hands trembled slightly under the table. Matt arrived late, his charm and bravado undimmed despite the recent legal battles. He greeted her with a smug smile, as if he still held some kind of power over her. But as he sat down, Clara met his gaze with unwavering determination. "This isn't about you," she said firmly. "This is about me taking back control of my life." Matt scoffed, leaning back in his chair as if her words were inconsequential. But Clara continued, her voice steady. "You've taken enough from me, from us. I want you to hear this. You don't get to define me anymore. I've rebuilt my life without you, and I'm stronger for it." Her words seemed to land harder than she expected. For a brief moment, Matt's confidence faltered, and she saw the man beneath the facade, a coward who thrived on manipulation. The silence that followed was heavy, but Clara felt lighter than she had in years. After the meeting, Clara stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air, her heart racing but her spirit soaring. Andrew was waiting for her, leaning against his car with a reassuring smile. "How do you feel?" he asked as she approached. Clara took a deep breath, the weight of her past finally lifting. "Free," she said simply, her smile wide and genuine. Andrew pulled her into a warm embrace, and for the first time, Clara felt completely untethered from the pain that had haunted her. That evening, Clara sat with Mia and Ella, explaining in simple terms that their father would no longer be a part of their lives. The girls listened quietly, their faces a mixture of sadness and relief. "Does this mean we can call Andrew Dad now?" Mia asked, her voice tentative. Clara's heart swelled with emotion. "If that's what you want," she said softly. The girls exchanged a glance before nodding enthusiastically. "He's already like a dad," Ella said with a shy smile. Clara hugged them tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her family was finally whole. The weeks leading up to Clara and Andrew's wedding were a whirlwind of activity. Clara had never envisioned herself walking down the aisle again, but this time felt different. There was no fear, no doubts, only love and excitement for the future. Mia and Ella were thrilled to be part of the preparations, eagerly helping Clara choose her dress and practicing their roles as flower girls. The guest list was small, limited to close friends and the few people who had supported Clara through her darkest moments. The wedding took place in a picturesque garden on the outskirts of town. The sun shone brightly that day, casting a golden glow over the ceremony. Clara stood at the edge of the aisle, her heart pounding as she looked ahead at Andrew. He was waiting for her with a look of pure love and admiration, his steady presence calming her nerves. As the music began to play, Mia and Ella walked down the aisle first, scattering petals with wide smiles on their faces. Clara followed, her steps sure and deliberate. When she reached Andrew, he took her hands in his touch grounding her in the moment. The ceremony was simple yet deeply emotional, each vow spoken with sincerity and conviction. Andrew promised to love and support not only Clara but also her daughters, embracing them as his own. Clara, in turn, vowed to let go of her fears and to build a life filled with trust and joy alongside him. As they exchanged rings, Clara felt a sense of peace and happiness she had never thought possible. The reception was filled with laughter, music, and heartfelt toasts. Mia and Ella were the stars of the evening, delighting the guests with their impromptu dance performances. Clara watched them with a smile, her heart overflowing with gratitude. Andrew joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist as they took in the scene together. "We did it," he said softly, his voice filled with pride. Clara leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his love. "We really did," she replied. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Andrew surprised Clara with a special announcement. "I've started the paperwork to officially adopt Mia and Ella," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Clara's eyes widened, tears welling up. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Andrew nodded, his expression unwavering. "They're already my daughters in every way that matters. This just makes it official." Clara threw her arms around him, her gratitude beyond words. Her family was complete. Life after the wedding felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope and endless possibilities. Clara's design business continued to grow, her reputation spreading as clients raved about her work. Andrew's unwavering support and business acumen helped her navigate the challenges of entrepreneurship, and together they formed a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. Mia and Ella thrived in their new environment, their laughter a constant reminder of how far they had all come. The day Andrew's adoption of Mia and Ella was finalized was one of the happiest moments of Clara's life. The girls proudly took his last name, their excitement palpable as they showed off their new birth certificates to anyone who would listen. That evening, the family celebrated with a small party at the guest house, their home now filled with warmth and love. Andrew made a toast, his voice thick with emotion. "To family," he said, raising his glass. "Because it's not about where we come from, but about the love we choose to share." As the years passed, Clara continued to grow both personally and professionally. Her journey from betrayal and despair to success and happiness became an inspiration to those around her. She often reflected on how far she had come, her gratitude for Andrew and her daughters driving her to give back to others who were struggling. Her story was one of resilience, proving that even in the darkest times, there is always a way forward. On a quiet evening, as the family sat together in their now renovated home, Clara looked around at the people she loved most. Mia and Ella were curled up on the couch, their laughter filling the room as they played a board game with Andrew. The sight brought tears to Clara's eyes, not of sadness but of overwhelming joy. She had fought for this life, and every struggle, every hardship, had been worth it. "What are you thinking about?" Andrew asked, pulling her close. Clara smiled, her heart full. "That I'm exactly where I'm meant to be," she replied. And in that moment, surrounded by love and laughter, Clara knew she had truly found her happily ever after. Thank you for listening until the end. What did you think of this story? If you can, leave your feedback in the comments. It helps me improve and motivates me to keep sharing stories. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and activate the notification bell. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will also touch your heart. A big kiss, and see you in the next story.